Okay, so let's start now. So this is my first time doing the hosting, so just bear with me. If I make any mistake, ignore that. So our first keynote speaker is Pitt. He's from Australia. He is a renowned Formula One driver from Australia. He's also president of one of the island in Indonesia, and he's also founder and CTO of BuildKite, which is true. The other things were not true actually. So Kit, welcome, and you can start now.
G'day, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Thanks for the organizers inviting me. This is how we say hello in Australia, g'day, but I was also told that kasake pune is, yeah, it's okay, don't worry about it. So, as Pratimesh said, I am from, Jiggles, how cool is that? I am from Australia. This place. Now, you've probably heard of places like Melbourne, Sydney, the Gold Coast. I'm not from those places. I am from the left-hand side, a place called Perth. That's where I live. Now, in Perth, we don't have Sydney Opera House because it's in Sydney. We don't have the Great Barrier Reef in the Gold Coast, and we don't have the MasterChef guys. They don't. Although I did see the one on the right drive a car once. No, the one on the left. I saw this guy drive a car once, and I was like, oh, it's a MasterChef guy. That's my story. But we do have in Perth some excellent beaches. There's one of the beaches, another one of the beaches. And in Perth, we've got these animals called quokkas. They're a bit like kangaroos, but instead of being this tall, they're about this tall. And they're always so happy. If you ever come to Perth, you just hop on a ferry and you go from there to there, and you will find these amazing little creatures, and they're just always so happy, and they're just happy to see everybody. Some more pictures. I also, in preparation for this talk, I found out that Perth is now Australia's new capital of cool. That was news to me, so I thought I might do my presentation in some sunglasses. Because Perth has been reborn as the capital of cool. I'm not going to do that, that's silly. One quick fun story about Perth before I talk about computers. This is my friend Brendy. He is ironing his pants. Classic Brendy. And he likes this comedian named Jimmy Carr. Have you heard of Jimmy Carr? Comedian? Yeah. He loves Jimmy Carr. And one of the ticketing websites that my friend Brendy follows had a sale on Jimmy Carr tickets. Jimmy Carr coming to Perth. And Brendy loves Jimmy Carr. So he bought 15 tickets. You know, boom, 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 15 tickets because he knows that all his friends will come. And he eventually got the tickets, and they were in this weird package. It came from Europe, which was weird because what he'd actually done is that he didn't buy tickets to see Jimmy Carr in Perth, Australia. He bought tickets to see Jimmy Carr in Perth, Scotland. And so, as it happened, I was going to be in Scotland at that time, and so my friend Brendy said, Keith, do you want to see Jimmy Carr? So I was like, sure. Here are all the tickets that I had. I had a lot of tickets to see Jimmy Carr. During his Jimmy Carr show, he does this thing where you can send him a message and tell him a story. So we sent him the message of our friend Brendy being an idiot. And he did the story, and you can see that's Jimmy Carr with the thumbs up and the story of Brendan. And we got Jimmy Carr to sign all the tickets, and we gave them to my friend Brendy. So we got 15 signed tickets to Jimmy Carr. It's a fun Perth story. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about Jimmy Carr and my friend Brendy. I'm here to talk about making it with Ruby. This is my talk today. To start off with, I want to go back in time to 1998. How cool is that? I learned how to do that in Keynote, so I've been trying to think of ways to insert those animations. 1998. What happened in 1998? Google was created. This is classic Google. No advertisements back then, but still Google. 1998, I was 10 years old. This is me at a computer, 1998. Oh, so good looking with that blonde hair. This was our computer, the family computer, 100 megahertz, 100 megabytes of hard disk, like 3 megabytes of RAM or something crazy. It didn't do much, but it did do some things. One of my dad's friends used to bring over these games, probably obtained illegally, but some of the games were Prince of Persia. It was a game I played as a kid. Doom is a game I played as a kid. It was a lot of fun. But one of the games that I liked was a game called Logo. I say game. It wasn't a game. But it was a drawing program that kind of taught you how to write computer programs. There's the triangle in the middle. Did anyone play Logo? Know of Logo? A few hands? Yeah. So the little triangle is a turtle. I know. And you could give it directions. Like here we say forward 100, rotate 90, forward 100, and you could draw things inside the program using this turtle. It's not very exciting. But the game that I loved as a kid was a game called The Incredible Machine. Did anyone ever play The Incredible Machine? Oh, one hand. It's very exciting. So The Incredible Machine is a simulator of a Rube Goldberg machine. I'm rubbish at trying to explain what it is, so I thought that I would show you what a Rube Goldberg machine is. It's a series of machines all interacting with each other and then do something amazing. This is, I'm not sure if this commercial was here in India, but this is a car commercial for Honda, and it was very popular, and I love watching it. So. This is all real. This was one take, and it was all real. I'm not sure how tires go up, but some nice seats. What a waste of oil. I'm not sure what that bit is, but I think that's the aerial. That's the thing at the back. I don't know much stuff about cars. That looks like a toaster. Seems like a really slow way of starting a car.
Isn't it nice when things just work?
But I thought it was kind of cool. So that's what a Rube Goldberg machine is. And The Incredible Machine was a game that let you do these things. This is what the game looked like. So in this game, on the right-hand side, you've got a bunch of tools. We've got like a belt that you can use to connect to an engine to a conveyor belt. We've also got a mouse-powered engine. Now, the important thing to know about the mouse-powered engine is that it only works if you hit it with something, so to scare the mouse into running in a little thing that will then turn the thing. And you've got these little ramps. So this is what the game looked like. You would drag the mouse and put it there. So you want to scare the mice, so we're going to drop the bowling ball on the mouse, and it will run, and then it will turn the cog, and the belt will run, bowling ball hits the mouse. The goal is to get the basketball.
Here!
And I'd play it a lot as a kid, and I just loved the idea of bringing all these things together and just putting them to make this incredible machine. I thought it was a good analogy for programming. A fun story is that one of my dad's friend gave us this. He gave us lots of programs, and one of this one, I booted it up, and I was like, "What's this?" He said, "Oh, you make games in it." And because I liked making things, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make a game in this thing." And I remember staying up hours and hours at nighttime trying to make a game. It's quite obvious now that this is not a game, it's a flight simulator. But I was 10, I didn't know what a flight simulator was, and I didn't know what a game maker looked like, so I spent ages. It kind of gives it away now, the fact that there's like a compass and fuel. Anyway, so that was 1998. The next part of my life I want to talk about is the year 2000. Classic 2000, year of the day the Earth stood still, one of the computers stopped working. My computer kept working, which was good. And I started learning HTML4. This was a book that I learned HTML from. I was, I think, 13 around this time. I got this book, Sam's Teach Yourself HTML in 24 Hours. It's a bit of a lie because I thought 24 hours meant like one day. Well, it is one day, but it's not like you wake up in the morning and then you know HTML tomorrow. It's 24 actual hours of work. I didn't know that. I also started teaching myself JavaScript. I would Google JavaScript and then I would just essentially copy programs that I found online and just try to recreate them. This was a calculator that I made. Well, I didn't make this calculator, I copied it. Didn't do much, it was just a JavaScript calculator. My parents knew that I was interested in computers, so they bought me this PC magazine. This is not the magazine, I tried to find the actual one, but there was this magazine that they gave me, and there was an article on how to build your own version of Hotmail. And Hotmail back then was the cool thing. Like, yeah, I could build a Hotmail. I could like give my friends email addresses at school and I'd be cool because I was the email guy. And the article that it had was misprinted. And so it was cut short. And the article showed you how to make a HTML form and set it up to create email addresses, but that's where it stopped. And I didn't know how to proceed. I was like, damn, this is so annoying. This article is cut short. So I Googled how to like make an email service in HTML. I was 13. I didn't know anything. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a backend. So I was trying to make Hotmail in HTML. Classic Keith. So silly. So the year 2000, that's gone. The next part of my life is 2003. That's when I started learning PHP. I assume a lot of you know about PHP. That's when I finally learned about the backend and what that does and its role in websites. I started teaching myself. I would Google like how to make Hotmail in PHP. And I'd find these articles like SitePoint. I learned to program from SitePoint. This like managing users with PHP sessions, MySQL, like that's how I taught myself to program. This article was written by a guy named Kevin Yank. It was only in, I know Kevin. He's in Melbourne, Australia. I didn't know that he was the guy that wrote that article. And I messaged him. I was like, hey, Kevin, did you write this article from like 2003? He said, yeah, I had hair back then, but I wrote that. I was like, oh, wow, you taught me to program. It was very cool. I learned like Macromedia Flash back then, doing some ActionScript, making some games, just by Googling how to do things and copying and pasting and trying and seeing if it worked. I got my first job back then. I learned ASP. Anyone ever do ASP, classic ASP? No? Good. It's no good. But it was one of the early Microsoft-based web languages. It's not really a web language, but it's just a language. All self-taught. I would go to the W3 Schools webpage. They've got a section on classic ASP. And I would just like copy-paste and change variables and make things work. I spent a lot of time in IIS. This is like back then it was the Windows website manager for your computer. And one thing that we discovered at the job that I was working at was that there was this toggle. Classic ASP was also known as VBScript. Another option to VBScript was JScript. Now, JScript is JavaScript. JavaScript is JScript. Microsoft just couldn't call it JScript because of a licensing and trademark issue. But it means that you could have JavaScript run on the server. So this was like 2003, I think. This was, and we managed to figure out a way to have JavaScript on the server, just like Node. And this was 5 years before Node came out. It wasn't very good. Like, it was very slow what we did. But we figured out a way to like share JavaScript on the server and on the client, essentially making an isomorphic type application in 2003. It was rubbish, but it was kind of cool to experiment. So 2003 happened. Now this is when things get interesting. 2007. That's when I discovered this thing called Rails, which we all know about. And I remember the discovery. It was it was amazing. It was written by this guy named David Heinemeier Hansen. You know him as DHH. And I started reading about this Rails thing. This was Rails 1.2 when REST was coming into Rails. And there was some UTF-8 fixes. And I was just so interested in this thing called Rails. And Ruby. I didn't know that Rails and Ruby were different at that point because I just didn't know. I thought they were the same thing. But I learned that they were two different things. And there was this video, depending on when you came to Rails, you'll remember this video from DHH, where he's essentially making a blog in Rails 1.2. And I watched this video, and it was so easy to use. Back then, I was using PHP and Symfony and ASP, and this was how many years ago? 11 years ago. And this just seemed like magic. Like I just add a column to the database, and all of a sudden, it just started appearing. Like there was so much work that you didn't have to do with Rails, and it was transformative. So I was totally sold. Rails and Ruby were the thing that I was going to do for the rest of my career. I started learning Ruby online. I was Googling places to learn Ruby. I came across this book called Wise Poignant Guide to Ruby. If you've never read it, highly recommend it. It's a bit crazy. Written by a guy named Why the Lucky Stiff. That's his name. No one knows his real name. He's Why the Lucky Stiff. This book had these weird comics and these how to write Ruby and then these weird comics. It was a great read. I started learning about the Ruby object model and metaprogramming from a guy named Dave Thomas. He had some great videos that I watched them all and I learned. Railscasts. Railscast was so good. Do anyone remember Railscasts? Yeah. Every week there'd be a new episode about some gem that I wanted to learn about, and Ryan Bates would put these things out for free. So every week I remember I would get my Subway, I'd sit at my desk at lunch, and watch Ryan talk about this new gem, talking about Thinking Sphinx or Can or any of these other gems that I didn't know about, and he would teach me these gems. Peepcode was another one that I used to go to. Jeffrey Grossenbach used to put out these screencasts. That's not his real skin color, but I used to watch him talk about things in Ruby, and I would just learn and learn. At this time, I was doing magic, for real. I was a magician. I was South Australian Magician of the Year. That is me in my earlier days, doing a thing with cards. I sometimes do magic during presentations. I did a talk at Red Dot Singapore where I did this trick. There's some sound. Oh, there's no sound.
Rolling that back deploys is a very important part of continuous deployment. Stuff catches on fire occasionally. Servers catch on fire. People's wallets catch on fire. I'm sorry, Aaron. Should I do it again? Stuff catches on fire sometimes. Servers catches on fire. Sometimes.
I was making a joke about servers catching on fire, but also making my wallet.
What I do...
Quiet, Keith. And so I couldn't do that trick today because carrying a very flammable object through airport security is a little bit iffy these days. So I thought I would do a slightly different magic trick if that's okay. Yeah? Okay, everyone can do it at the same time. It's pretty crappy. Just lower your expectations. Put your hand out like this, your right hand. Everyone can do it. Left hand. And turn one upside down. Turn the other one upside down. Put them on top of each other. And then grasp. Everyone doing it? But you make sure you have to put your hands up high in the air. And then go, ugh. Yeah, you'll figure it out. If you watch the video afterwards, you'll see what I did. I tricked you. So I was really into magic and really into Rails. So I built an e-commerce store selling magic items. And I wrote it myself. I wrote it from scratch. I actually still have the code base to this day. I was going to try and spin it up to show you some screenshots 9 years ago. The commit was imported from SVN. But I couldn't get it working because this was in the days before Bundler, where Bundler was a thing. Back then, you used to have to manually manage the gems and the Rails plugins. Rails plugins were a thing. And it was a nightmare. I couldn't get it working. But Bundler solved a lot of problems. I was also into a different sort of magic at this point. Yes, of course, World of Warcraft, an MMORPG, great game. I was playing a lot of that. And inside World of Warcraft, there's a thing called the auction house. And in the auction house, you can buy and sell digital goods with the currency of the game. And being an excellent programmer, I was like, oh, I could use my programming skills to make money off the auction house. So you can extend the WoW interface with Lua, another programming language. So I wrote an add-on that would scan the auction house lists and get the item and how much it was selling for. And then in C#, I wrote a little program that would take the auction house information and upload it to a Rails app that I wrote. And then I would be able to look for bargains. This item is selling cheaper than it usually does. I should buy that, wait a bit, and then sell it later on. I didn't make any money because I just spent all my time building this thing, and I didn't play WoW. But it was a cool thing nonetheless. I had a guild, so I was making guild websites in World of Warcraft. I decided to make a platform, and so I took the guild website that I had made and tried to make it so other people could sign up. More side projects. I was really into communication at this point and people talking online, so I decided to make a chat program in Rails so where my friends and I could chat. It was called Shout Node. It was in beta. I never got out of alpha. It didn't even get to production. But it worked nonetheless, and it was cool. And in the spirit of writing programs to solve my own problems, I was single at the time, and so I decided to make a dating app in hopes of finding a partner. As you can see, there was just my two friends and I on the dating app. It wasn't that successful. And if you're wondering, yes, I am getting married, and I'm getting married next year. Rails Rumble was a thing. Have you ever done a Rails Rumble before? So, one person? Yeah, Rails Rumble was a 48-hour competition where you write something in Rails, and you just kind of sprint and get it out. My friends and I did it a few times. We made an app called Food Time, which was the Instagram for food. Now Instagram is the Instagram for food. We wrote a thing called Desks Near Me, which was a hot desking app where you could find a desk to go work at for the day. So Rails was just empowering this creativity that I had. I could make things that I couldn't make before. So that was 2007. In 2011, I decided to start solving my own work problems with Rails. This was back when iOS development was getting popular, and iOS development didn't have a package manager. So I decided to try and make one. I made a thing called VendorKit, which was pretty much a rip-off of RubyGems, but for iOS. Even the syntaxes were very similar. When you make a gem, you have a thing called a gem spec. I had a thing called a vendor spec, very original. And it looked exactly like a gem spec. And you would make these packages for iOS the same way. Instead of having a gem file, you'd have a vendor file, and you would list off all the requirements your application needed, and it would download these packages from vendorkit.com and install them into your application. And I'm just like, when I come across problems, I would kind of Google them, figure it out, and then implement them into the product. So that was 2011. 2013 comes by. I made a thing called Desktopper with my friend Mario Vizik. Desktopper is a cool thing, and it's still running today. What Desktopper is, it's a wallpaper sharing website for your desktop wallpaper. You would browse Desktopper, you would find a wallpaper that you liked, and if you liked it, you would just hit this download button in the bottom right-hand corner, and what it would do is it would send the wallpaper to Dropbox. So instead of downloading as a file, it would send it to Dropbox. And then what you would do is you would set up your desktop wallpaper to point to a folder instead of a particular file, and then you set random, and then all of a sudden, you've got these random wallpapers appearing by things you find on the website. It was very cool, all written in Rails, all written on the side, not my day job, just something fun that I thought would be cool. 2011, 2013, my friend Shannon and I started making a thing called Maelstro, and Maelstro was an email service. So instead of using Action Mailer, you would define these emails, these templates, and you would send variables to this service, and it would then send the emails for you, similar to Mandrill or Campaign Monitor or any of those sorts of tools that exist now. And during the project, we needed some continuous integration, some testing. And so working on Maelstro needed CI. I started looking at Travis. Travis was a bit cost prohibitive for private projects at this point. I looked at a tool called Integrity. That was another tool that was around at the time. I didn't really like it. I tried Jenkins, but Jenkins was very complicated to set up. This was 5 years ago, so it was a little bit, there was a lot of security problems as well. I tried TeamCity. TeamCity was very complicated. And all I wanted to do was CI. I wanted to test my app. And to get the app running on an Ubuntu machine, all I would do was run these 4 commands, and all of a sudden I was running tests. And this was simple. This was straightforward. Setting up like a Jenkins server seemed so complex. I didn't want to do that. But running these 4 commands, easy. It was easy to do. And so I thought that I would take a little sidestep from Maelstrom and make my own CI server. I was like, oh, I could do this. 1 week, 2 weeks tops. So I started a thing called BuildKite. And that was in 2013. 2018, now, 5 years later, still working on BuildKite. It was a side project of a side project, but now it's my full-time job. 5 years ago, I started this thing, the side project, CI. It's now a company. We now have staff, and we're profitable. We're a profitable business. All by accident, all because of a side project of a side project. This wasn't my day job. This wasn't my work. This was a thing that I thought would be fun. And we've got some pretty big customers now. We've got Airbnb, Shopify, DigitalOcean use us, Bugsnag, CodeClimate. You've probably heard of some of these companies. They all use BuildKite to do their continuous integration. And it's not just me anymore. It was me in the beginning. 2 years later, I found a co-founder, Tim Lucas, and he joined. And now it's not just 2 of us. There's this many of us. And we've hired more people. And we keep growing. And remember how I said that I lived in Perth, Australia? Not everyone lives in Perth, so we live all across Australia. I'm in the left-hand side, everyone else is on the right-hand side. You may have seen 2 faces fly off the screen. Jess, she works in Vancouver, in Canada. And Lachlan, I don't know where he works, but he travels around Europe. I think he just got back, but he travels around. So, and so we're a remote company. We don't have an office. We can work from wherever we want in the world. And like I said in the beginning, it was me for a while. It was just me. You can see the little period at the top where it seems small on screen, but that was 2 years in real life. And working on a side project at nighttime, so you've got your day job, something at nighttime, it's sometimes hard to stay motivated because it's, you get tired and you can't be bothered. But there are a few things that I did that I found to keep myself motivated working on these side projects. One of them was continuous deployment. So after the 10th commit or so, I was in production already. I don't like having something sitting on my machine for too long. I like being on production. The good thing about getting onto production quick is that it feels real. It's more real because you can show your friends. This is one of the first screenshots of buildkite.com. I know, it's very good. It was called Trigger CI at that point because I was still working on a name. But that was it, and this was on production. This was live, and people could use it. I was only telling my friends about it, but it was there. And it wasn't on Heroku, because Heroku was free. I didn't have to spend any money. And up to this point, BuildKite had cost me nothing. All it took me was time. Because I'd learned for free on the internet. I'd learned for free all these things. Rails is free. Ruby Gems is free. Heroku, free-ish. And this was my continuous deployment script. Run the test, push to Heroku master. It was very quick because there were no tests. So rake test did nothing. But it meant that continuous deployment was a thing that I was doing. I used Bootstrap in the beginning, a CSS framework, mostly because I didn't want to have to worry about the CSS. I wanted just to build things in Rails, and I didn't want the CSS to get in the way because I'm not really a front-end programmer. I'm more of a back-end programmer. New technology is something that I avoided. It's very easy. Like, we're all in an industry where there's lots of new things all the time. And there's new shiny tools and frameworks come out, and you want to try them. But I resisted the urge because I found that I would get bogged down or distracted by these technologies and not focus on my side project. Web scale is another thing that I avoided. I didn't scale anything. I wrote the slowest code in the world because I had to scale to one customer, and that was me. I talk to my friends sometimes, and they say, yeah, I'm writing this like WebSocket pusher, infrastructure, computers, lots of keywords, lots of words that I don't understand, but they're scaling to nobody. No one's gonna, they get bored because what they're doing is not fun. In the beginning, we didn't have WebSockets, so buildkite.com would be live and things would change. If something changed in the back end, it would be reflected on the front end. But we didn't have WebSockets. We didn't have pusher or live updating technology. This is what we had. 5 lines of JavaScript that if you read them, just refreshes the page every 3 seconds. In the background, nobody noticed. Nobody noticed this was a thing. This is like the equivalent of magic in the web browser because this is live WebSocket technology in 5 lines of jQuery. No one knew, and it worked really well. Tests? No. No tests. I didn't write any tests because tests were boring. I did a private beta, and that allowed me to control who was signing up to this thing that I was making. I didn't want people signing up and then breaking it and then be like, oh, your product is crap, because it wasn't finished. I got paying customers really early on. Out of private beta, I put a pricing page up there. Stripe is a thing that wasn't in Australia. So I had to build my own billing infrastructure, which is the most boring thing in the world. But I could charge credit cards, but I had to build subscription, recurring stuff, and it felt like work and it was boring. I looked online. I don't think Stripe is in India just yet, but it seems like it's coming soon. So I highly recommend if you do a side project, you need billing, don't do it yourself. I looked at the pricing page for buildkite.com. I took this is an old screenshot that I had of the pricing structure we originally launched with. Coming up with pricing for a product is really hard, and I think I've nailed the secret, and I'm happy to share it with you today. This is the secret to nailing pricing. There is no secret. It's just choose a number. That's what we did. I just chose 100. That's product pricing. There you go. Boom. Done. Because the number is going to be wrong. The number is always wrong. So you might as well just choose something and see what happens. Don't stress about it. Just choose something, move on. I also innovated on what's important. I didn't innovate on password reset. I didn't innovate on sign up or login or like updating your avatar. I didn't innovate on those things because everyone does those things. And there's probably a gem that does it already. I didn't innovate. I innovated on the things that were important. And I was solving my own problem. That's what was the fun thing about what I was doing. I was solving my own CI problems. And I kept shipping. That's what kept me motivated the most. Always shipping product features. Features, yeah, features. People say too many features are no good. My opinion, features are fun, because features are fun to write. I looked at the GitHub blog. This was a GitHub blog post from 2008. Now, this is March 2nd, tarball downloads. March 9th, popular repos. March 10th, textile. March 17th, Git support. March 30, check your usage. March 31st, search. In the span of a month, they pushed out a good 8 features. And this was constant through the first two or 3 years of GitHub. Always new things. And I think that's a big part of what made GitHub so successful in the beginning, is because it was constantly changing and new things were happening. I don't think they were getting bogged down in like WebSocket infrastructure technology. And it shouldn't feel like work. These side projects are supposed to be fun. I didn't want it to feel like I was at work doing stuff, because this was my release at the end of the day. I'd be at work, doing work things, meetings, business, suits, briefcases, all very professional. At home, I wanted to do something fun, and this was my fun thing. As I was preparing this talk, I kept rereading my pitch. And it was tips and tricks along the way to help myself stay focused. And I realized the one biggest trick that I just hadn't considered after I wrote them all, and that was Rails. Rails was the constant in all of my side projects. It's what I used for everything. And I wanted to quickly talk about the reasons why I think Rails was the perfect choice for my side projects. The first one is the ecosystem. Ruby gems. There's a gem for everything. Like, whenever I'm working on a piece of code, I think to myself, surely I am not the first person in the world to write this code. Like, if I need to do something with some API or something on the command line, I'm not going to be writing something new. it's probably been invented before. So I always looked for Ruby gems. I thought it'd be cool to look back at VendorKit and the gems that I use for VendorKit. I used Devise for user authentication because I didn't want to have to worry about user authentication. It's not what I wanted it to innovate on. So I used Devise. File uploads were done by Carrier Wave. These are all some of these are very old gems. I didn't know how to unzip. Unzipping pants. Oh, shouldn't have seen that. Desktopper was another one that I thought I would look at. These are all the gems that I use for Desktopper. I needed to interact with Dropbox, so I use a Dropbox SDK. Devise again. Sidekick for backgrounds. Search was handled by Ransack. State Machine, there was a State Machine gem. There was gems for everything. All I needed to do was take these gems, put them together, and build something. When I'm looking for a piece of code now, what I do is I go to GitHub. I'll go to the search box. I'll type in the thing that I'm hoping to find some code for. I'll hit enter. I get the search results page. And what I'll do is I'll filter by Ruby. And once I filter by Ruby, I get to see all the TOTP repositories on GitHub. And this is how I find a lot of the third-party code that I use, just by searching on GitHub. And I find what I'm after. Ruby Weekly is something that I've subscribed to. I get emails every week about all the new gems and all the amazing work that the community is doing. And so there's just so much in the Rails ecosystem there, waiting for you to put together to build these amazing things. Rails has got a lot of great features as well. Database migrations is one of those features that I always forget about, but it's amazing when I use. Because changing a table in production is quite a scary thing. But Rails has got you covered. It's got all the tools you need there to do it. Want to send an email in Rails? Done. This is how you do it. Don't worry about it. Don't innovate on sending email. Rails has got you covered. WebSocket technology, the thing that I was talking about avoiding, it's built into Rails now. It's there, waiting for you. Don't build it. Use it. Uploads, the Carrier Wave gems that I used in the past, built into Rails. Backgrounding tasks, built into Rails. It's all there. All these things that you need to build these side projects are in Rails, ready for you to use. Performance. Performance is something that I hear a lot about with Rails. But does it scale? Yes, it does. BuildKite, this is a picture of a Datadog graph from BuildKite. BuildKite works by running jobs on your own servers, and we call them agents. At peak last week, we had 43,000 agents connected at one time. And at peak, BuildKite does about 210,000 requests per minute. That's a bajillion a second. It's a lot of requests, and Rails handles it fine. We respond in 20 milliseconds in the back end. I mean, sure, languages like Golang or Elixir or those other fancy ones may do it in 8 milliseconds, but no one's going to notice 12 milliseconds. The majority of your performance problems are always going to be in your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and probably the database. That's probably where the performance problems will be. Performance is great. Security. Rails has a lot of security stuff built into it by default, and there's great gems in the ecosystem that help with security. Brakeman is a gem that we use that looks for common security vulnerabilities in your code base. Bundler Audit is another gem we use that looks for CVEs and security vulnerabilities in your gems and reports them to you. And Rails has a great guide on security, and it's probably one of the better guides that I've read. Obviously, there's still a lot of things you need to do to keep your application secure, but Rails provides you a great framework to build those security features. Testing. Sometimes a little boring, but Rails gives you everything you need to test. If something's too hard to write tests for, you're probably not going to do it. If writing tests is boring, you're probably not going to do it. But Rails provides you great tools to do that. RSpec is a tool that I use. I've used it for the past 8 years or something, and it's been great. I've not tried the other ones. I tried Test Unit, I tried some of the smaller ones, but I find you end up needing to get gems to do the things that RSpec doesn't do. If you want to record HTTP requests from some external provider and replay them in your tests, there's a solution for that already. It's called VCR. If you want to test the web pages and click through and enter forms and do flows, there's a gem for that. It's solved. You don't have to innovate. If you want to, one of my favorites is called Capybara Inline Screenshot. And what that'll do is if there's a problem in your page and a test fails, it'll actually show you the page inside your terminal. If you're using iTerm 3, which is a different terminal for Mac OS, it can show images in line instead of just text. And that's a very cool feature. So if you can learn if you've, it's easy to know if you've made a mistake in a test. And that's Rails. That's one of those are like the 5 things of many, many things that I think make Rails a great choice for a side project. And that's Rails. I mean, but the thing that I needed to remember is that I dropped out of high school and I didn't go to university. I didn't do those things. I learned online. I learned for free online. I learned from Kevin how to program with PHP MySQL. I learned Rails from DHH. You know, I learned Ruby from Why the Lucky Stiff. I learned metaprogramming in Ruby by Dave Thomas. I learned about every gem on the planet from Ryan Bates. And I learned about a bunch of other stuff from Jeffrey Grossenbach at Peepcode. I learned these things, and anyone can do it. Anyone can do this, because all you really need is a laptop and an internet connection, and you can learn what I've learned. And it's not just these 6 guys. There are literally thousands of other people that have contributed to all of these tools. This is only the first 300 or so names from the Rails contributor list. 5,000 people have contributed to Rails for free. They put their, they're making these things for us. We should use them. And they're free. It's so good. In some ways, I think that I'm still that 10-year-old boy. I'm still that guy. I'm still that, kid at the computer. I'm still playing the incredible machine. Except instead of those tools on the right-hand side, I now use Ruby gems, and instead of the sandbox on the left, it's code. It's the same thing, just different. Thank you very much.
That was really an inspirational keynote. We can take 1 or 2 questions. All right, so I think nobody has any questions. So you can meet Keith. He will be here throughout the day. And those animations were also really cool.
Thank you very much. I spent a lot of time with those animations.
Yeah.
A lot of time. And I brought a deck of cards with me, so the after party, if you'd like to see a magic trick, come find me. Happy to do one.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you so much.